It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited to be back here with you tonight on Thursday. Whoops. We have a lot to talk about tonight. Lots to get into. Big show. I just realized I forgot to put my phone away. Our featured story tonight, we're going to be talking all about Israel's annexation of the West Bank. And we're picking up on this one where we left off. I don't remember the last time we talked about it, but this is obviously a developing situation. Earlier this week at the UN General Assembly, there was a massive recognition of Palestinian statehood by 10 countries. And this wave of recognition was led by Emmanuel Macron, the president of France. Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and other countries followed suit. And now the European Union is preparing sanctions against Israel. They're looking at sanctioning right-wing members of the ruling government that are pushing for West Bank annexation. And they're also looking at stripping Israel of its partner status with the EU, and that will impose certain duties and other import restrictions on Israeli goods at European ports. It's a major, major diplomatic row between Europe and Israel. All of this was organized by France and by the Europeans to try to block Israel from annexing the occupied territories, something they've been talking about doing for months, years, and it looks like they're about to do imminently after their invasion of Gaza is complete. In response to this, Israel says they're only going to hasten the move, and they will move to annex, at the minimum, the Jordan Valley, but maybe all of the West Bank. But the notable story from today, actually, it's a bit of a surprise. Today, President Trump in the Oval Office said explicitly and publicly he will not allow Netanyahu and Israel to annex the West Bank, which is the most bold, explicit, public act of defiance by this administration against Israel since Trump got into office in January. I was honestly very pleasantly surprised to hear that. And I'm sure a lot of other people were too, because we didn't know where the administration was going to land on this issue. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is. It seemed they were insinuating that they might back the annexation. They might back their play. But Trump today said very powerfully and very strongly this afternoon, Trump said, I will not let them do it. They won't do it. I won't let them. We don't support that. And I hope he means what he says. So we'll talk all about that. That'll be our featured story. We'll talk about every aspect of it. We'll talk about the drive to recognize Palestine. We'll talk about annexation and Trump's resistance to that. We're also going to talk tonight about the YouTube pilot program. So what's going on? Earlier in the week, YouTube responds to Representative Jim Jordan, House Republican, and says that they are going to uphold free expression on the platform, and they would be reviewing previously suspended channels that were wrongfully terminated around 2020 for editorial reasons. Accounts that were suspended for questioning the COVID narrative, for questioning BLM, the elections, Ukraine, things like that. YouTube effectively admitted that they were put under pressure by the Biden administration, which has been proven at this point in court documents. They were put under pressure by the previous White House to censor certain opinions and certain channels. They say, so in the spirit of free expression, they're going to undo those terminations. Well, yesterday I did a show with Alex Jones on InfoWars, and it was his idea. He put us up to it. Not blaming him. But Alex Jones said, why don't we stress test this? YouTube says they're going to bring everybody back. He said, well, why don't we see and test their commitment to free speech? He said, let's make new accounts today. I said, let's do it, man. And we did. So he made a new YouTube account. I made a new YouTube account. And it looked like it was going good. Everything was going well. I uploaded my show from last night. The channel gained over 30,000 followers throughout the night and the early morning. And then it was suspended. It didn't last even 12 hours. YouTube came out with a statement later in the day and said, well, that's not how we're going to do this. They said it's a pilot program. So in other words, they're not just unsuspending everybody. They're going to pick and choose, and it's going to be limited. They said, and that hasn't even started yet. It's a pilot program that hasn't started. They said you have to submit an appeal, and then we have to approve it, and it's only going to be some accounts, and we're not even doing it yet. So they banned the channels. And everybody is saying, okay, so what gives? Are you going to have free expression or not? Because the letter said free expression. And maybe Jim Jordan overstated the extent of that. Maybe he exaggerated what was actually contained in the policy statement from YouTube. But I saw Steve Bannon, Vivek Ramaswamy, and others said, okay, so what gives? YouTube should have free speech. You said you have a renewed commitment to free speech, but you're still banning people? You got to do some pilot program? Really? Why? So we'll talk all about that too. Those will be our big stories. Before we get into it, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble. Smash a like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. What else is new? Not much. You know what is funny, though, before we get into it? So, of course, as you know, infamously now, 2 weeks ago, I said that I don't believe Israel killed Charlie Kirk. And so the new thing, the new attack that's being pushed is that Israel paid me to say that. I think Charlie Kirk was killed by some deranged leftist, not Israel, because he was their number one Shabbos goy. Everyone knows that. They say he was changing his mind. I find that hard to believe. So now the new line of attack is, well, I took the money, I sold out. What's the relevance? So last night, I make a YouTube channel, and we'll get into this in a moment and the details on it. But last night, I make a YouTube channel just to see, like Alex Jones also, just to see what the new policy is. Is it the same or is it different? Because nobody really knows. YouTube isn't being specific. So we make the new channel, and within minutes of making the channel, people are saying, oh, look, Nick Fuentes said Israel didn't kill Charlie Kirk. Now he's got his YouTube channel back. Hey, it got banned in a few hours anyway. What are you talking about? And by the way, even if it stayed up, they changed the policy. They sent that in a letter to Jim Jordan. They said, we're changing the policy. But do you see how this works? I apparently had the wrong position. By the way, I'm correct, but I had the wrong position. I didn't blame Israel for literally everything. And now everything going forward is evidence that it's a sellout. We made a YouTube channel. Oh, looky here. Look who's back on YouTube. I got banned again anyway. They acknowledged that. I saw another tweet after I went on Patrick Bet-David 48 hours ago. Somebody goes on Twitter and says, gee, Nick Fuentes just waltzed onto Patrick Bet-David and nobody has anything to say about it. Somebody said, ordinarily, if Nick went on a big show like that, wouldn't you expect the ADL or Ben Shapiro to have something to say? Okay, a day after the interview went up, Media Matters wrote a hit piece about it. There's a whole Media Matters hit piece. It says, Patrick David hosts white nationalist Nick Fuentes. What are you talking about? They said, oh, no one cares that he won on Patrick Bet David and said Jews are worse than Muslims because they control America because I sold out, even though there's articles about it. But I have to say, here's the upside, though. It irritates me to no end. Like, yes, congratulations, you got under my skin. I'm annoyed by this latest attack. You got me. Very good. But here's what I will say about it. Does it not show how far the conversation has gone? In some ways, you can't even be mad. Like, I can't even be too mad about it because the year is 2025 and the mass awakening is so fast, so intense. The rate of growth is so exponential. They blew right past me. The masses blew right past me. Such that in 2025, Nick Fuentes is being called an Israel shill. That's how anti-Semitic America has become. Or maybe Twitter. And maybe some section of America. So in some ways, I'm almost like proud. You know, they'll be like, all the real anti-Semites will be locking me up with Ben Shapiro. They're saying like, you don't want to nuke Israel unironically. Get in the cell. Get in the cell, Jew lover. And, you know, I'll be being forced into a cell with Ben Shapiro and I'll be crying like a tear of joy. Like, I'm very proud of you guys. I'm very proud. This used to be such a lonely part of the internet. I was kind of like all the way over here. I felt crazy. I was like, guys, Ben Shapiro's a Jewish spy. People are like, yeah, but he says really good stuff about everything else. And I'm like, how could you support him? Charlie Kirk's a Zionist spy. How could you support this? And now we're in 2025 and people are like, Charlie Kirk said, show them no mercy. For Charlie Kirk, nuke Israel. Fuentes, get in the cell. It's like, I'm very proud of you guys. We finally made it. And maybe I didn't make it, but my ideas did. You did well, everybody. You did well. No, but I'm kidding. These are just jokes, guys. We're just having fun. But I did have that thought because it's like, we are now at the point, it's actually maybe a healthy corrective that something happens and everyone blames Israel. That might be a good antibody response because this inoculates the public from Israel ever doing anything ever again. It almost makes it so that Israel has to protect us. Because if something horrible happens in America, they will be blamed for it automatically. Anti-Semitism will increase, and eventually another Hitler will emerge. So it's almost like the incentive is there that Mossad will be working to prevent terrorist attacks for the first time instead of doing them. Because they'll know it's like, if a real Muslim ever does anything for real, we're going to get blamed no matter what. We got to stop these guys this time. It's like the next 9/11, America's going to war against Israel. Like 9/11-1 happens, everyone blames Iraq. 9/11-2 happens, everyone just blames Israel. We're invading Israel. So they're like, it's weird how things have flipped like that. It's totally inverted. So anyway, no, I'm just kidding though. We're just joking around, but I am really irritated though that now we have communists and like low IQ assholes that are like, they didn't write an article about you. They did. Oh, you got your YouTube channel back. No, I didn't. Oh, you got on Minect. Dude, it's super chats. Minect is super chats. And they forced me to go on there anyway. I go there and they're like, we made an account for you. I'm like, whatever, I'll sign up. If you thought the super chats were unhinged, dude, the Minect messages are unhinged. I'm not even, and I like it. I've been using it. I've done about 40 of them. They're like super chats. People pay a couple bucks. I answer the question in a text form. You thought the super chats were unhinged? The Minect community is just next level. Gut level, next level. I answered like 40 of them the other day, or I don't know what it's, 20, 30, 40 of them. And some of them were just so crazy, I didn't even know what to say. I don't want to say what was in them in case the people that asked the questions are watching the show right now, but some of them were a little crazy. And I read super chats for a living. That's my living. I thought I've seen it all. And Minect, I don't know what is in the water with the PBD podcast community, but the questions were quite extraordinary. I thought super chatter groypers were crazy. Get a load of that. But anyway, so those are just some thoughts on the state of the discourse. We're going to move on. We are going to get into the news here. And our first story, I want to talk a little bit about the YouTube situation and how it came to be. And there is a point to this. So as you know, earlier in the week, YouTube, Alphabet, the parent company for YouTube, came out with a statement. And this was published by Representative Jim. I don't want to say what was in them in case the people that asked the questions are watching the show right now, but some of them were a little crazy. And I read super chats for a living. That's my living. I thought I've seen it all. And Minect, I don't know what is in the water with the PBD podcast community, but the questions were quite extraordinary. I thought super chatter groypers were crazy. Get a load of that. But anyway, so those are just some thoughts on the state of the discourse. We're going to move on. We are going to get into the news here. And our first story, I want to talk a little bit about the YouTube situation and how it came to be. And there is a point to this. So as you know, earlier in the week, YouTube, Alphabet, the parent company for YouTube, came out with a statement. And this was published by Representative Jim Jordan from Congress. And they said that YouTube is renewing its commitment to free expression. They said that they are going to start to review and then reinstate YouTube channels that were previously terminated around 2020. Now, there's an important distinction because what YouTube said specifically is that they were under pressure from the Biden administration, which began in 2021. They were under pressure from the Biden administration from 2021 onward to censor opinions about COVID, about Ukraine, the election, and other political issues. So YouTube didn't say it's a free-for-all. They didn't say we're reinstating everybody. They didn't say it's going to become free speech like Twitter, like X. YouTube, in their letter to Jim Jordan, said that we were under political pressure from the Biden White House in 2021 to censor certain opinions. They said we wrongfully terminated those accounts. We acknowledge that, and we're going to undo the suspensions. Now, Jim Jordan took that policy statement and blew it up and said, guys, YouTube is unsuspending everybody. He literally said in his tweet, they're unsuspending all accounts. All accounts was the word. And everybody was under the impression that YouTube had free speech. Now, I was immediately skeptical because I read the statement, and the statement is what it is. It didn't say we're letting everybody back on. It didn't say free speech would be the new policy. The specific claim they made is there was political pressure to wrongfully terminate based on opinion. Now, YouTube has terminated accounts for other reasons like hate speech and conspiracy theories and a load of other things. And they had been doing that before the Biden administration applied political pressure. So the question is YouTube only reinstating the accounts they terminated after 2021? Or will they be reviewing the suspensions of people that were terminated before 2021? Are they only going to reinstate accounts that were banned for misinformation, or will they unsuspend other YouTube accounts too? The question is, what exactly is the new standard? And how and when will those accounts begin to be reinstated? That was the question. And so yesterday I went on InfoWars with Alex Jones and we talked about it briefly, and he was very cynical about it. I said, let's be open-minded. I said, I don't have high hopes either. I said, but it is clear that policy is changing at YouTube, because over the past year, I've seen it firsthand. My clips and videos about me that have been uploaded over the years have all of a sudden started to get recommended again to people on YouTube. For many years, if you looked up my name, you would get highly curated results in the search algorithm. For many years, YouTube would just simply not recommend any video about me. They would actually demonetize or terminate channels that had me on their show, where I appeared in their videos. And so clearly something is changing at YouTube. That is real. The question is, how far is it going to go? What's the new policy? When is it going to happen? And so in the spirit of stress testing this announcement, me and Alex Jones last night, we both made new channels. So YouTube said that you had to appeal, and there was this pilot program, and they would reinstate after a review. We said, we'll just make new accounts. Let's just see what happens. So we both made new accounts. I made mine late last night, I think after midnight, right around when the show finished. And the channel quickly gained tens of thousands of subscribers. I think I got up to a little over 30,000 subscribers throughout the night and into the morning. And by noon, the channel was banned. My channel was banned. His channel was banned. And YouTube released a statement about it. This is what they said. They said, quote, "We terminated these channels as it is still against our rules for previously terminated users to start new channels." So we're still banned, and we're still banned from making new channels. That hasn't changed. It says the pilot program for terminations that many people are referencing isn't available yet and will be a limited pilot program to start. We'll have more on how the program will work, who is eligible, and how creators can access it soon. Okay, so it's actually a pilot program, and that a pilot program means it's a test drive. So what exactly does that mean? So I suppose everybody is invited to appeal, but they have predetermined which limited accounts will be reinstated. Do I have that right? How exactly is the pilot program going to be run? I suppose they're inviting everybody to appeal, or maybe not. Maybe they'll send an email to specific people. But they have predetermined, or are in the process of predetermining, who will be reinstated and under what conditions. A limited, pre-selected number of people will get their channels back. And depending upon how that goes, maybe then they'll reinstate everybody based on a particular criterion. I think that's the implication. And this is the article about the whole thing. This is from Newsweek. It says, quote, "Newly created YouTube accounts for the conspiracy theorist Alex Jones and far-right commentator Nick Fuentes were both taken down hours after their creation, despite anticipation that the platform would begin reinstating banned accounts. Many on the right have been expecting a flood of reinstated accounts in the coming days. Representative Jim Jordan, the Republican chair of the House Oversight Committee, shared a letter earlier this week from YouTube's parent company, Alphabet, which said it would give creators who were banned for repeat violations of COVID and election-related content policies that are no longer in effect the chance to rejoin the platform. Jordan, appearing to overstate the extent of the company's commitments, wrote on X on Tuesday that the change would offer, quote, "all creators previously kicked off YouTube for political speech to return to the platform." Jones and Fuentes may not be eligible to rejoin under the program even when it does get going. Jones was taken off YouTube prior to the pandemic in 2018 for violations including hate speech and child endangerment. Fuentes was banned in 2020 for hate speech. YouTube said this week it will be letting some creators taken off site over COVID and election rules be reinstated, although the pilot program hasn't begun yet. Nevertheless, some criticized the move to remove their channel. Trump administration ally Vivek Ramaswamy compared the removals to the temporary suspension of Jimmy Kimmel, who was briefly taken off the air following pressure from the Trump admin and local affiliates. So I fully recognize that YouTube did not announce that they were going to let everybody back onto the platform. Here's the issue. Why are they not letting everybody back on the platform? It seems to me that this is intentional. They want to give the appearance that they have capitulated to the Trump administration. They want to give the appearance that they are recommitting to free speech, but in reality, they have no intention and they do not want to offer that at all. So Jim Jordan goes on Twitter and says they're letting everybody back. No, they're not. They never said they would. They're not going to. What they said is there's going to be a pilot program. They're going to let a few people come back later. We don't even know when. We don't even know how. We don't even know who will be let back on, and we don't know if that will ever take off, if they're going to expand that to anybody else or everybody else. The commitment that we have been given is paltry. It's nothing. And this is where the Republican government needs to step in and do more. It has been 10 years since Trump came down the escalator. Trump was president for 4 years. In his first term, he's been president almost for a year now. And let's be very clear about this. These tech companies are afraid of the Trump government. All the media companies are. Why do you think ABC pulled Jimmy Kimmel's show? It's because they require approval from the FCC for a major merger. They're afraid of what the FCC might do to them, to their business dealings, to their licenses. And that is a legacy conventional media company. Social media is no different. And a lot of people don't realize this, but in the first term, throughout Trump's first term, Mark Zuckerberg and all the other heads of the social platforms, they were actively sucking up to the Trump administration. Zuckerberg and many others on the Meta Facebook board, they were working with the Trump administration, and they were deliberately giving the first Trump administration the impression that they were rolling back censorship, even though the entire time they were increasing it. Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg and others on the Facebook board throughout that first term, they were telling the Trump admin, we want to work with you. We want to collaborate on national security. We want to work to get conservative accounts reinstated on the platform. The entire time they were increasing the censorship. So this is a game between Silicon Valley and Trump. His first administration and his second administration, this is what they always do. The administration holds all the cards. The administration controls the regulatory bodies that regulate not just the social platforms themselves, but also them as businesses. The FCC, the FTC, they govern mergers and acquisitions. They govern antitrust. They govern regulations concerning the airwaves and the internet. Silicon Valley is terrified, like many other companies, of this extremely activist and aggressive administration. And this is why, in the first term and in the second, they're sucking up to Trump. That's what they do. That's what this is. Why do you think Mark Zuckerberg last summer went on a podcast with his gold chain and his t-shirt and his perm and said he was not going to put money into get out the vote for the Democrats like he did in 2020? Why do you think he rebranded himself as like a libertarian dude bro? On the 4th of July, he posts a video wakeboarding with the American flag. Why do you think he rebranded? Why do you think all the Silicon Valley guys were at Trump's inauguration? It's because they knew during the election, especially after Trump got shot, that he was going to win. And they knew once he won that Silicon Valley would be in the crosshairs. I would say more specifically, big tech. Not little tech, but big tech. Alphabet, Meta, Amazon, they would be in the crosshairs by the Trump administration, which would be vengeful, animated, aggressive, looking to regulate, looking to use, like I said, those various agencies and regulatory powers to pursue vengeance against his political enemies. They all know what they did. After January 6th, Trump was banned from all those platforms. Meta banned him from Instagram and Facebook. Alphabet banned him on YouTube. Amazon banned him on Twitch. And so they were terrified, just like they were in the first term. They were even more terrified during last year's election and then the transition period because they knew what was coming. They knew Trump was coming in full throttle, I am your vengeance, and was going to bring down the hammer on his enemies for censoring him and his supporters. So they each made a grand gesture of submission. That's why they stood down and didn't support the Democrats. That's why they all attended the inauguration. That's why they're doing this. They're effectively pleading with the administration, trying to placate and appease it so as not to rouse the ire in the same way that ABC did, for example, with Jimmy Kimmel, or some other companies have. The reason I bring this up is so that we can understand what the policy really is, where it comes from, why they're doing it, and to understand we should not take big tech out of the crosshairs. Just because they kissed the ring, just because they made the trip and they attended the inauguration, just because they made this paltry gesture, they said, well, so first of all, it's September. They're going to do a pilot program later for like some people. Just because they're doing this gesture, do not mistake what this is. We have all the cards. The idea that we would accept the olive branch now that we have all the power, and by we, I mean the right wing in general, now that we have all the power, Republicans have the House, Senate, White House, now they want to tell us they're going to let a couple of channels back? Are you kidding me? Here's the point. This Republican government needs to press the advantage. Do not forget that the second Trump was out of power, what did they do? Literally the second that Trump was charged, or impeached rather, that's what that is, an indictment. The moment that Trump was impeached for January 6th, big tech, they didn't even wait until the inauguration of Joe Biden. They started to drop the ban hammer. That's how that works. For 4 years in the first term, they tried to grease Trump's palms. They tried to appease him. They tried to pretend like they were on side. And then the second that he posed no threat to them in the lame duck after he was impeached, Mitch McConnell holding that over his head, the second that he posed no threat to them, they banned him. They banned him, and part of that was to destroy him. Silicon Valley, big tech, tried to destroy Trump. They tried to destroy his base. They banned QAnon. They banned white identitarians. They banned conspiracy theorists. Then they banned election deniers, COVID deniers, BLM, Ukraine deniers, George Floyd deniers. Like, never forget what they tried to do. And this was sustained. They vowed to do that the day after Trump won the election, and they started to carry it out the second he was out of power. They vowed to ban Trump and everybody on November 7th, 2016. They increased censorship throughout his first term, and then the second he was out of power, they moved in for the kill. They went for the head of the snake, and then they went for the whole base. They banned everybody for having the wrong opinions. And they thought they were going to get away with that. They were complicit with the Biden administration, with the rest of the left-wing elites, and they thought that that would be the end of right-wing populism in America. Whatever your feelings are about Trump himself, reservations, criticisms, they thought that would be the end of every flavor of right-wing populism. Of course, it wasn't just Trump supporters that got banned. It was the entire alternative right. Race realists, white nationalists, white identitarians, anyone talking about replacement migration, anyone talking about Jewish power, anyone denying the Holocaust, every conspiracy theory, from the most mild to the most extreme, they thought they would destroy right-wing populism. And then their fortunes suddenly changed. October 7th happened. All of the indictments and persecution of Trump started to backfire. Little tech flipped and went for Trump. Elon became the richest man of the world and started pouring money into Trump. Trump got shot. It became inevitable he would win. And now they're running the exact same game, which is to appease Trump and buy time. That's what they're playing for here, is time. They're trying to appease Trump long enough until he loses the midterms, and then he will be constrained in his power, and then playing for time, running out the clock until Trump is out of office. After which you can imagine probably there's going to be more censorship if it lets up in the intervening years. This is why Republicans need to learn the lesson over the past 10 years, which is you have to salt the earth. It's not enough that YouTube is making these concessions. There needs to be a leadership change at YouTube. The government needs to come into YouTube and say, look, if you don't uphold free speech, you have no rights. If you don't uphold free speech, we're breaking up your company. We're breaking up Alphabet. We're breaking up Alphabet into 5 different companies. We're breaking up YouTube. We're going to destroy your company. That's what it needs to be. That's what the Trump administration needs to do. They need to come in with the full force of the FCC, the FTC, whatever other relevant government agency or department, and say, listen, it's going to go one of 2 ways. You're going to let everybody back on the platform and we'll leave you alone. If you don't, there will be no more Alphabet. You are a monopoly. These are unfair trade practices. As far as we're concerned, this is a violation of the Communications Decency Act. And you can't be protected from liability if you act as a publisher by censoring people. That has to be the play. And by the way, this is what the Democrats are trying to do in the other direction. This is what they did do. Think about it. When the Democrats were in power, they immediately, it was a full force of government that came down on the platforms to get them to censor. When it was revealed in litigation with the attorneys general of Missouri and I think Louisiana, or maybe Arkansas, when these attorneys general of the different Republican states sued the social platforms over censorship, what we found out is it was actually multiple agencies and departments in the Biden administration that were putting pressure on the platforms to censor. It was the White House press office. It was DHS. It was HHS. It was like a dozen departments and agencies that were picking up the phone or sending emails to Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and telling them literally ban this person, ban that person, ban this kind of content, ban these opinions. Like, that's not an exaggeration. That was in the documents. That was part of litigation. It's been revealed. And think about that. When the Democrats win, when Biden gets into power, that's how they operate. We're in charge now. Let's use the government. Let's step on their throat. Let's lean on them and pressure them, and let's ban all of our enemies. Let's ban Trump, ban the J6ers, ban the COVID deniers, ban the vax deniers. And that actually injured us politically. That actually prevented us from politically organizing. That was actually a big deal. That was a huge political blow to broadly our side. And by our side, like I said, I don't mean Republicans, conservatives, Trump supporters. I mean anybody that was resisting the government, anybody that was resisting these mainstream narratives. When the Trump administration gets into power, we need to do the opposite and say, we're going to lean on you to bring people back. Biden had you ban them. Now that we're in charge, we need to make it so you can never ban us again. You reinstate us, reinstate this one and that one, and make sure it never happens again. And this is my problem with Jim Jordan. Alphabet sends him a letter and says, so we're going to do a limited pilot program. We're going to bring some people back who were banned for certain violations. And what does Jim Jordan do? He publishes it and exaggerates the extent of what they're doing. He says they're going to let everybody back on. Like, bro, no, they're not. They're not saying that. They haven't followed through at all yet. There's no results. And that's not even what they're promising. So why are you selling their policy to us? You should be representing our concerns against them. Understand the difference? YouTube is going to Republicans and saying, we'll give you these concessions if you leave us alone. And Republicans are coming to their voters and telling them, guys, they've got it covered. It's going to be fine. Hey, you work for us. You should be taking our demands, which should be outrageous and extreme, and go to YouTube and ask for as much as you can possibly get and never be satisfied. But would you like to know why this never happens? It's because so many of the Republicans are in the pocket of big tech. Do you know, for example, that Turning Point USA, they were involved with big tech? They were getting donations. How do you think Charlie Kirk became so famous in the past year and a half? It's because Charlie Kirk, he admitted this. He made a deal with TikTok. He talked about this openly. He bragged about it. He said, I'm going to go to TikTok, and they said that I'm going to be boosted on the For You page, and I would be allowed to have a channel if I said to get out the vote. During the Biden administration, during the pandemic, Shapiro, Daily Wire, I'm told, as well as others, they made a deal with YouTube. And the deal was, if you don't talk about vaccines, then we won't ban you. You think that has something to do with why Ben Shapiro said, get the vaccine, you idiots? Remember that one? Get the vaccine, dopes. Why do you think Shapiro was allowed to grow on YouTube when everyone was banned? Why do you think Kirk was allowed to grow on TikTok when everybody was banned? It's because Republicans and conservatives are in bed with big tech. They get money from big tech. Conservative influencers rely on big tech for platforms, and Republicans get donations from big tech. And that's why they've never fought big tech. And as a matter of fact, why they're covering for them. And that makes them complicit. And it reinforces the idea that there really is no distinction then between right and left. Like, think about it. If big tech is working with the Democrats to censor conservatives, and then big tech is paying conservatives not to say certain things or not to go after big tech, well, who really has the power? Is it the right and the left, or is it the money? The money is paying both sides. CPAC is sponsored by big tech. Turning Point got checks from big tech. Shapiro cut a deal with big tech. So if Silicon Valley is paying Republicans and Democrats and they're upholding those policies, who's really in control there? And you realize there's a handshake deal between the left, the establishment right, and the money to do one thing, which is to gatekeep the conversation. If Silicon Valley is banning the most extreme elements of the right, and most conservatives don't speak up for the far right, they're complicit in it. In a sense, they benefit from this because that's their competition. That's an inconvenient political opponent for them. If their right flank, who is also their competition, is being banned, then they enjoy a monopoly on right-wing opinion making. That has an extraordinary benefit in terms of you control what is being said. It's also a financial benefit. You're the only one that gets to say right-wing things. Looking at it another way, it's almost like Silicon Valley gives out a license for who gets to have a right-wing opinion. Shapiro is a licensed right-wing opinion haver. Turning Point USA was a licensed right-wing opinion haver. American Renaissance, Sam Hyde, Nick Fuentes, TRS, Andrew Anglin, we all are not licensed. We are not allowed to share our right-wing opinions. We're not allowed to make money off of our right-wing opinions. Only they are allowed. They have a monopoly on being right-wing in America, and that monopoly is created by Silicon Valley and in some sense enforced or overlooked by the government. And the effect that this has is it lets the establishment right and Silicon Valley control the gate of which ideological statements or opinions are allowed to be amplified using mass media, using social media. That's what that is. And right now, everybody believes that the problem is over because we have Twitter and we have Rumble. Like, I'm able to do this show on Rumble. But think about it. I'm banned on everything else. I'm still banned on Instagram. I'm still banned on Facebook. I'm still banned on YouTube and on Twitch. And those are the biggest platforms. And it's not like, oh, why are you complaining? You're on some platforms, but not others. No, I'm banned from all of the biggest American platforms. Facebook has 3 billion users. Okay? Facebook has 3 billion users. Do you know how many are on X? 500 million. Okay? The highest estimates say that X has 500 million active users. Facebook has 6 times as many. YouTube has 2.5 billion users. So X is an anomaly, and it is arguably the smallest of the American platforms. It is in the same territory as Snapchat in terms of its user base. It doesn't approach the size of Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. Do you know how many active users are on Rumble? Some estimates say 20 to 30 million. So there's 3 billion on Facebook. There's 30 million on Rumble. There's literally 100 times more users on the biggest platforms, YouTube and Facebook, than that are on the alternative streaming platform Rumble. And 6 times as many as the microblogging platform X. And by the way, X and Rumble are both under enormous pressure all the time. X seems to be in some kind of détente with the ADL, lest we forget that the ADL waged a war against Elon Musk and X. leading an advertiser boycott, trying to bankrupt the platform, and then thereby bankrupt Elon Musk. It was only after he made the pilgrimage to Israel and Auschwitz that they seemed to strike some sort of a deal. And as far as Rumble is concerned, the future is uncertain here as well. Will Rumble be able to turn a profit? Will Rumble be able to survive after the Trump administration, which ends in just 3 short years? So we have something like a beachhead right now in Silicon Valley, but by no means is this concrete. And I'm not throwing shade at Rumble, but my point is, it's not like we have free speech on the internet. We have pockets of it, which are very tenuous. We have pockets of free speech on the smallest alternative platforms, X and Rumble, and we don't know how long these embattled platforms are able to survive. Meanwhile, the biggest platforms have not changed at all. They seem to be temporarily allowing some things to be more widespread, but there is not some kind of large-scale reinstatement program happening. And that's where you look at the Trump administration and say, where is the whole of government approach to get us back? Jim Jordan should not be trying to sell YouTube's appeasement. He should be trying to work against YouTube to get as much as possible for his own constituency. But I'm not going to hold my breath. And by the way, that's why me and Alex Jones jumped on the platform. Me and Alex Jones jumped on the platform to put pressure back onto YouTube. We knew it was going to go this way, but think about it. Jim Jordan said, everybody's coming back. And all of the masses breathed a sigh of relief and said, oh, don't worry, YouTube's going to let everybody back now. Me and Alex Jones started our new channels to say, no, look at what they're actually doing. They're saying a pilot program sometime in the future. Some people can come back. It's to put the pressure and the spotlight back on them and say, if this is what free speech looks like, that's bullshit. People have been banned for years over nothing. And now you're going to give us a pilot program? Too little, too late. Where's the rest? Where's the free speech? Let us just make videos. You have left-wing people shooting people in the face. People are celebrating it on social media. We're banned because of stuff we said 7 or 5 years ago for hate speech. It's ridiculous. I would also add what is interesting before we move on. It's really interesting who is allowed on YouTube and who isn't. Isn't it? Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, both of them, in spite of their major pivot towards Israel critique and talking about Jewish power on some level, they both remain totally uncensored. Shapiro never got censored. Turning Point never got censored. Candace, Tucker never got censored. They're not worried about censorship. Me, I've been banned for 5 years. And they're so on top of it, I make a new account literally yesterday and they ban it in 12 hours. It's not like they're letting me fly under the radar. It's not like they're letting me have an unofficial channel. They are still hunting me on YouTube. Like, they will not let me on YouTube at all. To the extent they are aware of my presence on the platform, they wipe it out. Whereas other people are making millions of dollars saying the exact same thing or similar things. I just find that to be a little bit notable. There's all these big conspiracy theories. Who is Nick? Who's Candace? Who's Tucker? Well, let's look at who's being promoted and who isn't. These platforms are all in bed with Israel. These platforms are all in bed with Jewish power. And they never saw fit throughout Candace's turning or Tucker's turning to restrict their channels in any way, at any point. No suspensions. I think Candace had a short-term ban from streaming last year, and then she picked up right where she left off. Interesting. Meanwhile, even Steven Crowder caught a ban. Steven Crowder caught a ban. Myron got demonetized. Sneeko, of all people, got banned. I got banned, but Candace Owens calling Jews filth every day, that's not banned? I wonder if she was part of the same deal as Ben Shapiro to stay on the platform. Just speculation. But anyway, that's the YouTube issue. I do want to move on, though. I want to talk a little bit about the annexation of the West Bank. This is a major geopolitical story, and I'll give you some of the background. But first, we'll just talk about the big development, and this just blew me away. This afternoon, in a press conference in the Oval Office, Donald Trump, the President of the United States, said that he is openly now defying Bibi Netanyahu in the state of Israel. And he used these specific words, which I couldn't believe it when I heard it. Trump said to the press, "I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank." Whoa, whoa, whoa. Where does he get off, huh? Where does this president get off? Where does this goy get off? What do you mean you won't allow Israel to annex the West Bank? That's like a totally new take on this arrangement. I thought Israel controlled America. That's a little surprising. What are you talking about? Israel has been running your shit the whole year. You're not going to allow Israel? Whoa, whoa, get a load of the badass over here. I was pleasantly surprised to hear that. Because the whole year, it has worked exactly the opposite. It seems like Israel makes the decisions. They make the decisions about what they can do, and the United States has no say. We are not allowed any input. Forget about a veto over their actions. We don't even get to give them advice. Like, we don't get to say anything. They act, we respond. They act, we support it regardless. They act, and we make excuses for it. That's how it has worked this entire year. That's how it worked when Trump was in office the first time. That's how it always works, actually. And so this was the most confrontational, defiant, bold, audacious statement that Trump has made about Israel, I think, ever. I think at any point that he's ever been president. He said, "I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. I won't let them do it." That's a serious challenge to Netanyahu. And I want to talk about that remark because I'm going to be honest, we have no reason to believe him. He can say that, and it sounds good, it sounds oriful, and I wish it were true. But when you look at the record of history, the U.S. president does not have a very strong record of not allowing Israel to do things, of being able to restrain Israel or prevent Israel from doing things. Israel does whatever it wants. Israel does whatever it wants, and nobody seems to be able to stop them. Not any or every Muslim country put together, not Russia, not China, not all the Europeans, not America. And what would you naturally then assume? What does that imply about Israel? Like, just, this is a simple question. Think about it. If no country on earth is able to tell Israel what to do, what can we conclude about the earth? It's an easy question. Don't overthink it. If every country in the world and all of its people want Israel to stop doing something, but no one can get them to stop, what can we logically conclude? What must we conclude about the world? I don't mean to perpetuate any anti-Semitic tropes, and I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist, but this is just like logical. Doesn't that seem to imply, wouldn't that tend to imply that Israel controls the whole world? Wouldn't that tend to imply that? Now, there can be all sorts of explanations and rationalizations, and, conservative commentators will get on their shows and they'll say, you think a nation of 16 million people controls the world? They're the size of New Jersey. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, but it is also true, though, that they seem to do whatever they want. Russia can't do whatever it wants. China can't do whatever it wants. America, they might be able to do whatever they want. America might be tied with Israel in terms of doing whatever it wants and no one can stop it. Sort of interesting. But anyway, so we'll get into that. We'll talk about what are the odds that Trump is actually going to defy Israel. First, let's talk about how we got here. And how we got here is that Israel is planning to annex the occupied territories. Currently, as it stands, there is a semi-autonomous state of Palestine, which is run by the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. Gaza in the south is run by Hamas and has no meaningful state apparatus at all. To the extent that the West Bank and the Palestinian Authority has some level autonomy and some level of international recognition, Gaza is far worse off than that. And it seems that the major strategic objective of Israel in their war, not just against Gaza, but against the whole Middle East, is to annex formally both of these territories. To make it so that there is no competing administrative governmental authority in the occupied territories. There is no Hamas, there is no Palestinian Authority. There is no Gaza and West Bank, there is no Palestine. There will only be Judea and Samaria. There will only be a greater Israel. Understand, that is the explicit stated objective of this war. So since 2023, they have made it seem as though their objective is to defeat Hamas. Israel has given people the impression that their goal is limited and that their objective is to defeat Hamas, disempower Hamas, free the hostages, retaliate for October 7th. In reality, their official government papers, their official strategic doctrine, members of the Israeli government have said, no, the objective is far more ambitious. They want to eradicate Palestine. They are going to ethnically cleanse Gaza. They're going to destroy everything there, kick everybody out, and then they're going to take it. And once they're done with that, they're going to annex the West Bank. They're going to take all the territory, they're going to incorporate it into Israel, and then there will never be a Palestine. They will probably disperse the Palestinians, expel many of them, and there will just simply never be a Muslim Arab state in the Jordan River Valley or in Gaza or anywhere in the Levant. That's just going to be over. That's the real objective of the war. And as you know, the war is reaching its terminal stage. After the ceasefire fell apart in March, Israel renewed its blockade, its airstrikes, and then its invasion of Gaza. Recently, they authorized a plan to take over the entire Gaza Strip. They're starting with an invasion of Gaza City, which is the most major city and what they say is the biggest remaining stronghold of Hamas. That's what they say. They have reinvaded Gaza City. And they're also talking about in the Israeli Knesset and in the Israeli War Cabinet plans to annex the West Bank as well. Those are their plans. That's what is underway right now. In response to this, the Europeans are trying to stop the plan. There are 130 some countries in the world that have already recognized a Palestinian state, and almost every other country has said officially they want there to be a Palestinian state. Properly understood, what Israel is doing is a genocide and an ethnic cleansing. They're genociding the Palestinians in Gaza. They're ethnically cleansing anyone that remains. They're ethnically cleansing Israel by annexing the West Bank, and they're erasing a sovereign state, which should be a sovereign state. And so almost every country in the world is opposed to this. Almost every country in the world wants there to be a two-state solution, meaning a Jewish state of Israel and a Muslim Arab state of Palestine living side by side. And rightly, they see Israel's effort to invade, conquer, ethnically cleanse, and annex the occupied territories as effectively a war crime, a violation of international law. They also see that Israel is unstoppable. Iran is not able to stop this. The Arab Muslim countries are not able to stop it. The United States will not restrain Israel from doing this. And so that's why a couple of months ago, the French president, Emmanuel Macron, announced that at the meeting of the United Nations this month, he would move to recognize a Palestinian state. Now, why is that important? Why is it important to recognize a Palestinian state? Right now, there isn't one. There is no Palestinian state. There is no semblance of a real government, administrative authority. They don't have real sovereignty. Israel occupies most of it. They have security control over all of it. They control all the access to it. So they're not meaningfully sovereign. That's why other countries have been reluctant to recognize them officially, because they consider it more Israel's jurisdiction until there's some kind of peace agreement. The reason that France announced its intention to recognize the West Bank is so that when or if Israel annexes the West Bank, then France will sanction Israel. It will represent a diplomatic break with France. If Israel annexes the West Bank and you don't consider that a country, well, then what's the penalty for taking over an unclaimed territory, a semi-autonomous territory? It's not exactly clear what the ramifications for that would be. But if Israel annexes a sovereign state, then France would have to review its diplomatic relationship with Israel. They would have to rightfully view that as a violation of international law, as a war crime, and then there would be penalties in trade, in diplomacy, in politics, in culture, and basically everything. Israel would be punished for doing that. So what France is effectively doing is creating a red line. If Israel is on their way to annex the West Bank, France is drawing a red line in front of it and saying, if you do that, we will punish you, in order to deter Israel from moving forward. That's why France said we'll recognize Palestine. Quickly, other countries followed suit. The United Kingdom, Canada, Portugal, Australia, a number of other countries that had yet to recognize Palestine followed suit after France and said, we will recognize Palestine at the United Nations as well. And this is extraordinary because that means that these major countries, France and the United Kingdom being nuclear countries, being permanent members of the Security Council, being members of the G7, these are some of the most powerful countries in the world. Not only are they defying Israel, directly challenging Israel, but they're also defying the United States. They're also putting pressure on Washington. So it is extraordinary. It's an extraordinary step. At the United Nations last week, they followed through on the promise. France, the UK, Canada, Australia, Portugal, others, 10 countries in total, some less relevant ones like Andorra and I think San Marino. They followed through. They recognized a Palestinian state. The Israelis are not happy. They're furious. And by the way, this is an important thing to understand. When we say Israel, we don't just mean Bibi Netanyahu. There seems to be this idea in the public conversation that what Israel is doing right now is not the result of the Israeli government or the Israeli people, but it's just Netanyahu. They see Netanyahu as a figure like Hitler or like Putin. that Netanyahu is this great man of history, or maybe an evil man of history, who's driving this aggressive expansionist agenda. He is directing it. He is the center of it. But that's not true at all. It's not even close to being true. It is the consensus of the Israeli government. It is the consensus of Israeli society to do this. Understand what we're talking about. For anybody that would isolate Netanyahu and say it's all him, he's the problem, or that it's just the government. No, it is the consensus of the Israeli public and of the entire Israeli government to do this. And don't take my word for it. The leader of the Israeli opposition in the Israeli government, Benny Gantz, wrote an op-ed in the New York Times yesterday saying exactly this. The leader of the opposition that is against Netanyahu and government said, this has got nothing to do with Netanyahu. He said, we all support this. He said, if you're against the annexation of the West Bank, he said, you're not against Netanyahu. He said, you're against all of us. He said, you are against the security consensus of our entire country, of the people who, according to opinion polls, support this, and the entire government. It's like 99 members out of 120 of the Israeli Knesset support this, as well as all the leadership. So understand, when we say the Israelis are not happy, we mean the Israelis. We don't mean Netanyahu. We mean that whole country wants this to happen. And so the Israelis are defiant also. If the goal of recognition of Palestine was to deter the Israelis are undeterred. And members of the Israeli coalition government are drafting plans right now to introduce in the Knesset next week to begin to annex the West Bank. The Europeans are challenging Israel, and Israel is calling their bluff. The Europeans are saying, if you annex the West Bank, we consider that an illegal invasion. We consider that a war crime. Israel is saying, well, then so be it. We're getting ready to do it anyway. And this is the story. This is from the Times of Israel. It says, quote, on Monday, a number of countries, including France, announced they would recognize Palestinian statehood at a summit in New York ahead of the UN General Assembly. About 10 countries either have recognized a Palestinian state over the past week or are expected to do so soon. The United Kingdom and Canada have already done so, putting diplomatic pressure on Israel amid widespread international condemnation of its conduct of the war in Gaza. Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel's far-right national security minister, said on Monday night that those moves demanded immediate countermeasures, including the annexation of the West Bank. He said he would soon propose the application of sovereignty in the West Bank to the cabinet, where the idea has broad support. He also threatened the complete crushing of the Palestinian Authority, which administers parts of the West Bank and cooperates with Israel on security. Much of the world views the authority as the basis for a future government of a Palestinian state. The Israeli government opposes the creation of that and seems willing to take additional action to block the possibility, such as annexing at least some of the land envisioned for it. Prime Minister Netanyahu said on Sunday, quote, a Palestinian state will not be established west of the Jordan River. For years, I have prevented the establishment of this terrorist state, facing tremendous pressures at home and abroad. So Israel is now completely diplomatically isolated. There's 130 plus countries that recognize Palestine. And now you have 2 permanent members of the Security Council, 2 nuclear powers, 2 members of the G7. They're added to that too, as well as Canada and Australia, which are close allies of the United States too. And not only that, the Europeans are taking other measures too. The Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, said this week that she is going to put sanctions on Israel. The European Union is drafting sanctions against Israel in the European Commission. The pro-Gaza flotilla, which is supposed to bring humanitarian relief to Gaza aboard 52 civilian vessels, is going to be escorted to Israel by an Italian naval vessel. Spain has put an arms embargo on Israel. Other countries are reviewing their intelligence and security relationship with Israel. They're becoming completely isolated by Europe. And to the extent that there was a thaw in relations, that is totally on ice. What's more, Israel's losing even their partners in the Middle East. The United Arab Emirates said if Israel annexes the West Bank, the Abraham Accords are over. Egypt is now working with Iran. Saudi Arabia is working with Iran. It seems that the entire Middle East is united against Israel. So it is the entire world. The whole world, every relevant country is telling Israel, stop. Stop fighting in Gaza. Do not annex the West Bank. Stop trying to bomb and overthrow Iran. And Israel is undeterred. They plan to move forward anyway. Now today, President Trump of the United States finally weighed in, and this is what he had to say. This is from the New York Times. It says, quote, in his first comments on the matter, U.S. President Trump announced on Thursday that he will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. He said, quote, I will not allow Israel to annex the West Bank. It's not going to happen. There's been enough. It's time to stop now. Trump made the comments as Netanyahu was arriving in New York to deliver an address to the UN on Friday. He'll be meeting with Trump in the White House next week. A senior Israeli official told the Times of Israel earlier this week that the Trump administration privately cautioned Israel against annexing the West Bank. However, Jerusalem did not feel the same way. They said that this did not mark an end to the discussion and that they will discuss it further at the White House meeting next week. So this is where we are. We're in the end game here. We truly are in the end game. Israel has reinvaded the Gaza Strip. They have this plan to control the entire thing. They're sweeping it from north to the south. They're going to eject everybody and deport them to third countries, and then they're going to take control over the entire Strip. They're currently drafting plans to annex the entire West Bank, and then that will be the end of Palestine. In a last-ditch effort to deter Israel from doing this, France, as well as every other major Western ally, in a bold and unprecedented move, is recognizing Palestinian statehood. Macron said it's literally the last minute before Palestine is irreversibly erased from the map. There's only one country on earth that can stop Israel, and that's the United States. There's only one country that even can. Forget about a country that's willing or a country that doesn't like Israel. The United States is the only country on earth that even can stop them. And Trump just said today he's determined to do exactly that. He said, we will not allow it to happen. It won't happen. Enough is enough. It's time to stop. Of course, the million-dollar question is, what will happen now? Because now the entire world is challenging Netanyahu, literally the whole world. It's all the Europeans, all the Arabs and Muslims, and now the United States too. If Israel does this, they will have defied, forget about just the Western Europeans, they're losing the Abraham Accords, and they're going to royally upset Trump and the United States. This is like a make or break moment. If Israel moves forward, they risk permanently losing America. They're openly defying the president, and they make him look like a bitch. And who knows if that fractures the personal relationship between Netanyahu and Trump? Does it permanently damage the U.S.-Israel relationship? Does it sour the American public on Israel? But this is the most direct confrontation, the most direct and public challenge maybe in decades, or a decade, we could say, between Israel and the United States. Here's the problem. When the United States tells Israel it can't do something, there's not a very good track record of the United States actually being willing or able to stop them. Bill Clinton tried to get them to stop doing things. George W. Bush tried to get them to stop doing things. Obama tried to stop them from doing things. Trump, Biden, they've all tried to stop Israel. They never succeed, ever. And that's because Israel controls the United States. And you could look throughout the last year as an example. Trump wanted a deal with Iran. Israel wanted a war. Guess what we got? A war. Trump wanted Qatar to mediate a peace agreement between Israel and Gaza. Israel wanted to kill the leadership of Hamas. Guess what happened? Israel tried to kill the leadership of Hamas in Qatar. Israel, in just a short time, in 9 months, has repeatedly embarrassed and upstaged and defied the President of the United States. And they've done it openly. Throughout Trump's negotiations with Iran, he was really fighting more with Israel than with Iran itself. Iran was willing to negotiate. Israel tried to sabotage it, and in the end, Israel did. Israel launched an attack on Iran, probably without telling the United States. A war that we then had to go and clean up because Israel was losing. We had to go and impose a peace on the countries, which Israel wouldn't even abide by. So Israel sabotaged the peace talks. They dragged us into a war that we did not want. We didn't do as much as they wanted us to do, so then they tried to sabotage the peace that we were forced to go in and impose. And they made Trump look like an idiot. They made Trump look uninformed, that he didn't know what was happening. They made Trump look weak, like he wasn't in control of events. He couldn't restrain Israel and pursue diplomacy on behalf of the United States with Iran. And it kept getting worse. Trump was signaling privately and publicly, although indirectly, that he was opposed to Israel reinvading Gaza. Israel didn't care. They kept up the blockade. They led in humanitarian aid, and then they shot people for trying to get it. Trump asked them to stop the war. Israel accelerated it. They escalated it. And then, just 2 weeks ago, Israel was bold enough to bomb Qatar, which hosts the largest U.S. military base in the Middle East, and which Trump visited earlier in the year. Provocative, unprecedented, aggressive. And Trump was forced to signal his displeasure in private. He couldn't even say openly, he couldn't even openly condemn Israel for the attack. He said, well, we're not happy about it. And then they planted a story in the Washington Post that he had a very angry phone call with Netanyahu. Now Trump says he won't allow Israel to annex the West Bank. Like I said, this represents frustration. Trump is clearly pissed. He's upset that they violated the ceasefire, which they agreed to in January. He's upset that they are not willing to end the war or relieve the suffering of the Palestinians. He's upset that they sabotaged diplomacy and forced him to bomb Iran. He's upset that they bombed Qatar, a U.S. ally. He is out of patience. And he's done begging Netanyahu or planting stories. That's why this afternoon he said straight up, I won't allow it, because he can feel it. He can sense it, that the whole world knows that Israel runs the show here. And he's getting tired of feeling weak. He's getting tired of feeling upstaged and embarrassed. And you can see very clearly throughout the past 9 months, he's been escalating this messaging slowly and not as much as we'd like to see. But now finally he says, I'm not going to allow it. The question is Israel going to call his bluff? And the thing is about this whole situation is we could get Israel to stop. Think about it. Israel relies on us completely for everything. Do you know what would happen if the United States wasn't backing Israel right now? If the United States stopped supporting Israel, the next day, Israel would get murder raped by Iranian missiles. It wouldn't even be funny. The day after the United States stopped supporting Israel, their entire sky would be black because 10,000 missiles would be raining down on them. Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, all these countries would turn on them and declare war on them. They would get banned from Eurovision. They get banned from soccer. They would get sanctioned by Russia, China, Europe. The ports would be empty. The airport would be shut down. They would get condemned in the Security Council repeatedly. It's like we are the ones holding back the night for them. If it wasn't for us, there'd be a Muslim-Arab coalition war against them. They'd be kicked out of every international body, every international market, any kind of organization, condemned by the UN, diplomatically isolated. It would be over. And what would Israel then be forced to do? If that was the reality that Israel faced, then they would have to change their approach. Suddenly, then, they would have to worry about losing the whole world. And they would have to change how they operate. In other words, the reason they're able to prosecute the war in Gaza in the way that they are is because they are protected from the consequences of it by us. They would have to get along like every other country does, not making too many enemies, trying to earn and win friends. They would have to use goodwill and be trustworthy, because if they didn't, well, every country might gang up on them. So we own everything they're doing because they couldn't do it without us. Forget even about the military aid. People like to talk about the foreign aid that we give them. The foreign aid is not a lot. It's that we give them the best weapons. It's that they've accumulated so many of them. It's that if things ever get out of control, everyone knows we will go to war on their behalf. We will defend them. So it's as if they're the 51st state. It's not just that they have weapons, it's that they are protected as much as Texas. It's like American soil. And it is that moral hazard. It is that they are protected from the consequences of their actions. In other words, we're cashing the checks that they're writing. That is why they're able to get away with everything they get away with. Everyone is unhappy with them. Everyone is against what they are doing. And under normal circumstances, that would be a big problem for them. The only reason it isn't is because the whole world can have a problem with them. We have their back. So if the United States is unhappy with what they're doing, then it should go without saying that they should change what they're doing. Our approach to them should be, if you don't do things our way, then you can try your luck with the rest of the world. That should be our approach. Why wouldn't it be? You could not fight your wars without the weapons we give you. If it wasn't for us, the whole world would destroy you. So you better do what we say. Instead, we resort to begging them to do what we want. We're trying to cajole them by bitching about them in the Washington Post. We're like negotiating with them. Why are we negotiating with them? What leverage do they have? We're the biggest country in the world, or the most powerful is what I mean by that. And so when Trump says we're not going to allow Israel, I question whether that's a serious statement, because if he meant it, he would tell Netanyahu, you're going to stop, because if you don't, we're pulling the plug. And Israeli society would collapse the next day. Whichever government loses the United States, whichever Israeli regime loses the United States, that regime is going to get overthrown the next day, because they know the writing on the wall over there. That's the dirty little secret about the whole thing, is that this could stop at any moment. We could stop it at any given moment in time when we decided. If we just came with some seriousness and said, look, if you don't stop, it's over for you. Because if we said that, and if we meant it, and if we followed through, they understand the seriousness of that. The bottom would fall out. The floor would open up beneath them. So when he says, we won't allow you to do that, I don't really believe him, because I don't think he's willing to follow through on what he's saying there. Because we know how the Israelis operate. They're bold. They move quickly, secretively. They defy the United States all the time. And when push comes to shove, the United States is not willing to punish them. We say all the time, we're not happy with them. We're frustrated. That's not what we're in favor of. They do it anyway, and we're left cleaning up the mess because our politicians are not willing to follow through. They say, well, what are we going to do? Abandon Israel? Yeah, at a certain point, yeah. Israel and the Jews are always telling us, we have a right to exist. We have a right to defend ourselves. Okay, well, lots of luck. Tell that to the billion Muslims that fucking hate you. You know, it's easy to say all that, beating your chest, when Americans will go and fight and die for you. We have a right to exist. We have a right to defend ourselves. Oh, you have all these rights? Go tell that to a billion Muslims that would be at war with you at your gate tomorrow if it wasn't for us. You have no right. Your rights come from us. You have a right to exist. Your right to exist is not real without the United States. You have no rights without us. And yet they disobey, yet they defy us. I do not believe for 1 second that Trump is going to seriously hold them accountable. There is no doubt in my mind that they are preparing right now plans to annex the West Bank. They're getting ready to call his bluff. And when they do, there will be no consequences. And that goes for all these countries. All these countries do business with Israel. You know, even with the Europeans are going to recognize Palestine. What does that do? That does nothing, actually. That's because they're all afraid of Israel. Recognizing Palestine, it doesn't change anything. What in the real world does that actually change? The way Palestine is today, it will be tomorrow. The same way that it was last week and the week before that, with or without diplomatic recognition from France and the United Kingdom. If you want to punish Israel, sanction them. Sanction their economy like you do in North Korea, like you do with any other one of your enemies. Sanction their economy, ban their tourists, ban their visas, ban their passports. Deport Israelis from your country, ban them from your universities, ban them from your country. Stop selling weapons to them. That is how you put pressure on Israel, if you're serious. And I was thinking about it today. You would do that to any other belligerent nation that's doing the same thing. When it was Milosevic, when it's North Korea, when it's Saddam Hussein, when it's Putin, when it's any other country when it's Idi Amin, any other country that you think of, when you think of genocide, ethnic cleansing, atrocities, dictatorship, right to protect, human rights violations, any other country that you think of would be subject to international condemnation, would be subject to sanctions, would be subject to travel bans. There's a whole menu of ways to respond. With Israel, people are like writing strongly worded letters. Israel drops a bomb on Qatar, and every Muslim country gets together and they write a strongly worded letter. Israel's been genociding these people for 2 years, and France, recognizing that it's about to be completed, says, well, we're going to write a letter that recognizes Palestine. Okay, well, your letter and $1 will buy you a cup of coffee. It does nothing. Same with Trump. We won't allow them to do it. Really? Because they seem to believe they can do it. And they're getting ready to do it. So maybe you should tell them what's going to happen if they do. Maybe do something now. Just an idea. It's been 2 years, hasn't it? So we will see if Netanyahu calls Trump's bluff. I don't think it will happen immediately, although it might. But I don't think they'll do it that brazenly. I think that, like everything else, they will try to placate him. They will give him reassurances. And they will draw up some plan where they could do it by surprise, do it slowly, do it with some loophole. Ultimately, they will get what they want. And what they want is for Palestine not to exist. And I don't know that the United States is willing to prevent that from happening. Netanyahu will meet with Trump at the White House next week. He's speaking at the UN tomorrow. It'll be interesting to see what he says. At the speech tomorrow, it'll be interesting to see the results of the meeting. I have a feeling maybe he's going to finesse Trump into seeing it his way. Maybe it has something to do with Epstein. Maybe it has something to do with the midterms, or who knows, some other thing. Maybe Trump becomes another victim of the so-called left-wing violence that's sweeping the nation. And I don't say that, I don't want that to happen, but when a U.S. president goes up and says, we will stop Israel, you know, what tends to happen to politicians that do that? Doesn't end up well, usually. I wonder if Trump has just forfeited his office or something more precious to him by even daring to say that. This is the predicament that we're all in. We're being held hostage by like gangsters here. So I like the comment. I like what he said. It's a powerful statement. It's confrontational. But on the one hand, I think that he's just not serious about it. On the other hand, if he is, I wonder if his days as president are numbered because of it. But I guess we'll find out next week. We'll hear a little bit more from the prime minister, and we'll see if they're ready to call his bluff or if they're going to try and play games. But that's that. Like I said, we'll stay on top of that. We'll see what happens in the coming weeks. We're going to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this. It's kind of a scary situation, I'm not going to lie. You know, when you see what these people are up to, it is kind of like an ominous question. When you pose the question, which is, who can stop Israel? And you realize the answer is nobody. Like, not the Europeans put together, not America, not anybody. They put bombs in pagers. They have billionaires in America. The most powerful American billionaires are allies of Israel. They're spying on our spy agencies. They've infiltrated our spy agencies. They're spying on them. When you realize the extent of how much they have infiltrated absolutely everything, in some sense, you realize it's too late. We opened up the door. They have spread their tentacles absolutely everywhere. And now they see everything. They hear everything. Their capabilities seem to have no limits in some sense. And you start to think that if we even wanted to resist them, the president would need to like get in an underground bunker. Like the president would need to get in a doomsday bunker before he challenges Israel. Like the reason that Iran is able to challenge Israel is because they build cities underground. They build nuclear missile cities in underground fortresses. Their country is a mountainous underground fortress. It is a nuclear missile factory built inside of underground cities and underground fortresses. And that's the country that's prepared to fight Israel. Every other country is not prepared. That's what it would take. And people say we should treat them like any other country. We can't. That's terrifying. So anyway, but that's that. We are going to move on, though. We'll take a look. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this.
Matt Kavanaugh sent $50. Was October 7th fabricated by Israel themselves in order to take over Gaza? Or was it committed by Hamas, which is a terrorist organization?
I believe it was committed by Hamas, but that Netanyahu had the government stand down. Clearly, they have capitalized on it. And we have the documents. It shows they were aware it was coming. They had advance notice. They had intelligence. They knew what kind of attack. They knew when it was coming. They saw them preparing for it. So I believe that they had full knowledge. The idea that they got caught by surprise, it doesn't even make sense. It's just not believable. Israel's border with the Gaza Strip is one of the most surveilled borders in the world. It's not even that big either. It's a small area. It's a short border. And they have a giant wall around it with cameras and thermal vision and everything you can imagine, drones, and the Gaza Strip itself is not big. They saw them practicing. They saw them training. They had intelligence, numerous intelligence reports years in advance saying an attack is coming. And this is how it's going to play out, and this is when it's going to happen. Now, we can believe that they ignored the intelligence, or I think what's more likely is they stood down and they let it happen. They let Hamas come over the wall. They let them do some damage. They dragged their feet in their response. I think then when the Israelis responded to the attack, they did some damage of their own. I mean, there's actually reports about the day, October 7th, that Israeli tanks were blowing up Israeli houses. Like the Israeli military was killing its own people to inflate the death count. That's documented. So no, I don't think it was a false flag by definition. You know, a false flag is when a group or a person carries out an attack waving a flag of a different country other than the one they represent to implicate that country. So I don't think Israelis did October 7th wearing the flag of Hamas. Hamas carried out the attack. I think, though, that, and they had their reasons to do it, but I think Israel let it happen.
All right, let's get right to it. So Nick was talking about Jim Jordan, and I bang with Jim Jordan. Matter of fact, is that Jim Jordan? I think it's Jim Jordan. I like Jim Jordan. Yeah, Jim Jordan's cool. He has some good takes. But as far as what Jim Jordan said about them reinstating a lot of the banned YouTube people and accounts, this just is another example of politicians have no power. I mean, politicians are simply glorified lobbyists. They just lobby. They work for they work for the people with the money. That's just what it comes down to. These politicians, they either don't know what's going on, don't care what's going on, or they're just getting, walked around by the leash by whoever's paying them. That's what it's been made apparent with all of the previous elections up until this point. And I think a lot of the reason why Donald Trump was so popular was because a lot of us thought that he's the only person that could go against that establishment mindset, right? We were wrong. So are we surprised that politicians are getting it wrong? Are we surprised that Jim Jordan is announcing it as one way? YouTube actually announces it something else. And I don't know whether or not Jim Jordan had a response to it, but the people with the money run stuff. And I'm just going to go through a little bit of my notes, bounce all over the place a little bit. And of course, I welcome your feedback as well, because I may be wrong. I may have some blind spots, so definitely hold me down with that. All right, so what do I have right here? Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk. Ben Shapiro and Charlie Kirk were establishment in my mind. They were establishment. They were the safe, what did Nick call it? Controlled opposition. Whether it was in 2020 with Ben Shapiro telling people to get the vaccine, whether it was Charlie Kirk and him pushing for us to support Israel's war efforts against Palestine, they are establishment folk. And when I say establishment folk, I mean they are controlled by their individual interest. What puts money in their pocket, what is aligned with their donors, what's aligned with Ben Shapiro supporting Israel. It's all the same thing. And the more I study politics, I realized that, and we said this on the last show, that the money is indifferent to Democrats and Republicans. The people with real power, like, why would you just bet on one party? Isn't that the entire reason why you make a certain amount of money, gain a certain amount of power, have a certain amount of leverage to where you can leverage both sides? Like, why go all in on one? If you were playing roulette at the casino and you could bet on both black and red, but not necessarily lose as much. Let's say, obviously, you're betting the same amount on black, you're betting the same amount of red. So, unless it comes up green, let's just act like it was both black and red. You're going to break even every time. If you break even, which people are not concerned with the donations that they give the politicians beforehand, the amount of money that they can make once that politician gets in office is just compounding. It compounds at an amazing factor. So they do not care how much they need to put on both sides, spread the money out. And when you look at the most successful people in determining policy and getting their agendas done, who is it? It's big tech, it's big pharma, and it's Israel. And when we look at these groups, these are the groups that put money on Democrats and Republican politicians. They leverage both. So when I think about us as, the people, the number one mistake that we're making is like we're pretty much like we're suckers for belonging to a party. Why would we belong to a party when the people with the most amount of leverage that always get their agenda pushed, they rely on working with both? So why are we the fools? Why are we the suckers? Why are we the sheep that continue to do it in a way where we get no results while they're doing it in a way that gets results? And that's why they have to radicalize us so much. The people with the money, the people that really control things, big tech, big pharma, Israel, they want us radicalized. They want us radicalized to the point where I couldn't even see myself voting for Trump, where you have Trump derangement syndrome. But then when you take a step back, and a lot of those people that were never Trumpers, those are the very same people like a Ben Shapiro, like a Lutnick. Those are the people that are controlling Trump right now. Think about it. They can afford to say they're never Trumpers, but then they'll do a deal with whoever makes the most sense for pushing their agenda. We get so emotional that I could never vote for Trump. Think about it. I've talked about this before, where I've sat down with family members, friends, where I'll go over certain things with them. Like, let's say I'll have a top 10 policy-wise when the election was going on. People that agree 70, 80% with Trump over Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, they still won't even consider voting for Trump. And it's the same thing on the opposite side, even though I think more people agreed in line with Trump's policies because the Democrats and liberals just got too far out of hand. But the point is the point, right? The point is that they create emotional triggers on both sides to where none of us could even picture voting for the other side. And once we do that, we've lost. Everybody else gets their agenda pushed. All of the people even that voted for Trump to release the Epstein files, voted for Trump to release JFK's files, voted for Trump for mass deportation. Now Trump's doing carve-outs. Now Trump's telling you if you keep pushing him to release the Epstein files, we don't even want your vote. We don't want your support. You're not MAGA. Trump said no new wars. Now Trump's creating wars all over the place. Now he's supporting Israel and their bullying efforts in the Middle East. The things that people voted for, Trump is doing the opposite. And the people that did not support Trump, like the other diehards supported Trump, like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, like a Joe Rogan who helped you, like a Theo Vaughn, like a Candace Owens, like a Tucker Carlson, like a Dave Smith. Trump is turning his back on them and pleasing the people that bet on both sides. So what does that tell us as civilians that what we should be doing? Stop getting confused and falling into the games that these politicians play with us. They both pit us against each other. They don't care. You want to know why? Because the politicians do not work for us. The politicians work for the elite. So when the politicians work for the elite want them to become as radical as possible so they can radicalize us as much as possible. So therefore the elites will stay in control. The politicians have no power. They take money from the elites. They take money from Israel. They take money from big pharma. They take money from big tech. That's who pays them. Just like when you go to work, you may not like what you're doing, but you compromise or figure out how you can rationalize it however you see fit to make sure that you get that check at the end of the week. Why do you think that they're any different? Why do you think they're any different? Because they tell you they're different? Stop it. Stop it. So that's kind of just what I was thinking. And these numbers that he mentioned with Facebook, I had no idea that the numbers were that big in comparison to X, Facebook having 3 billion, YouTube having 2.5 billion. Those are some big numbers. If anything, I'm sitting back thinking like, we need to start making a bigger play on Facebook. But that's just kind of the thoughts that were going through my mind. And this last thing, I was sitting here I don't know if y'all saw me having a conversation while Nick's video was on, because it was sparking a lot of conversation. And one of the things where it was asked, how does Israel have so much power? How does Israel control everything? It actually makes a lot of sense that what happens in Israel would be prioritized. When you look at things as Israel versus the United States, I don't even think it's like that. I think there's big power players on both sides, and things may lean one way or another based on what those big power players agree on or what they're arguing about in some cases. So when it comes to Israel, and people like to say Israel's the size of New Jersey, how could you think that they're going to control the world? Well, think about that region. Think about how the natural resources in that region make that region very wealthy. Whether it's the poppy seeds, whether it's the oil, and whatever other natural resources they have. Even in some areas, it could be, is there gold? I don't even know. Whatever natural resources that they have. That region is mostly black and brown people. So Israel, being the only European country in that region, obviously, if Israel's attached to America, then that benefits America tremendously. Tremendously. America may not have the natural resources that Israel can now tap into in that Middle Eastern region. America may not have that. We're on the outskirts. The only reason why Israel would need America is for the exact reason that you see them using us. It's for our military. We're pretty much just Israel's military. And when you think about even going back to that saying where how could Israel control things, and it's the size of New Jersey, most organizations that control things are very small groups. Look at the wealth as it's made up in America. How the top 1% of the 1% has more wealth and more power than the other 99%. Think about it. The smaller, powerful minority typically controls the majority. The only reason that they wouldn't control the majority is if there was a physical conflict. If there's a physical conflict. So Israel kind of has the best of both worlds, because now they can detach themselves from America in certain ways, but also use America's army to benefit them when they need it. So it's like I could detach myself from America and all the debt that they have going on over there. And oh man, wow. The elites, I'm kind of playing it out in my head. The elites use America almost like, what if this is operated almost like a LLC? You know how different people use different shell companies? Well, they'll let one company go into so much debt because they can always either file bankruptcy or just close that LLC out because they have this other profitable one that's worth so much more. I'm just gathering my thoughts around this because I just had this epiphany. And maybe y'all are looking at it like, duh, this is obvious, but that's why nobody cares about America going into so much debt. America's a throwaway company. America's a throwaway company. Spend as much money as you need to just to make sure that you have a big enough military to where you can defend Israel and whoever else is aligned with pushing that particular agenda. That's how I see it. Wow. Damn. America's just a throwaway. Our only value is our military. Other than that, we're just a bad business. Our only value is our people, our military. We can get a bunch of different ideas here. All right, we're going to have to come back to that. I got to process that a little bit more. But let's move on to the next topic that they were talking about as far as with the UN This recording was done last week, so they had they already met? Yeah, they had already met at the UN, I believe. They had already had the UN meetings, but this was from last Thursday's show. My apologies, I'm just getting to it now. But just some questions with Bibi Netanyahu coming to America, with a lot of people walking out on his speech, a lot of countries, I should say. Do you think Israel cares about these other countries? Israel cares about America. Like Nick said, there's only one country on earth that can stop, impact, whatever we want to call it, Israel from doing anything that they want and taking the West Bank. Unless China decides to get involved, which I don't see them jumping out the window. I don't think Russia would jump out the window, but it's really just down to America. It is down to America. And when Trump makes a statement like he's not going to allow Israel to take the West Bank, y'all remember what the reporter asked Trump when he said that in that meeting? We put it in the other video, maybe from last week, one of the videos. But a reporter, just to let y'all know, a reporter followed up and said, well, have you spoken to Bibi Netanyahu about this? Pretty much like, bro, go get your boss. Oh, you're the store manager? Okay. You're the manager here until the big boss comes. Okay. Go get your boss. Go run that by your boss. That's what that reporter was asking him. And this is all offensive to Trump. Trump knows that he's looking like he's being bullied right now, like he's being walked around on a leash. That's exactly what he's looking like. Here, like Nick said, you have Israel who moves around like they have the big brother of all big brothers behind them, supporting their efforts. And it's really just because we clearly owe them something. I mean, we owe Israel something. I don't know whether it's because we're in debt. I don't know what's going on, but clearly there's something there. Or we're just being used by the elites, which obviously we already went over that. That's a strong possibility as well. Or perhaps it's a mixture of both. I don't know. I don't know. But certain things, I think we all can just open up our eyes and see. Certain things we can just open up our eyes and see. And, when Nick says that you have no rights, whenever you hear people say that Israel has the right to exist, what? We already went over this, man. No. What state, what country has the right to exist? Think about some of the countries that you live in. If you say that that country has the right to exist, then that means that they had the right to kill, pillage, rape, do whatever it is that Christopher Columbus and his folk did in order to establish your country. Now, they did it. It is what it is. But to say that you have the right to exist, what does that even mean? You have the right to exist, so you had the right to commit ethnic cleansing. You have the right to respond to with a genocide. When somebody responds to they're responding to something that you've done. Nick said you have no rights. Your rights come from us. Your rights come from us playing the role of your big brother. Your rights come from us having the numbers, so therefore you don't have to send troops when there's a war in Iraq, and we can just send American soldiers, and American soldiers will risk their lives. This is why Charlie Kirk was so important. This is why Nick Fuentes is so important. Because Charlie Kirk and Nick Fuentes, they largely lead the generation and group of people that are going to be fighting these wars. The ones that are actually going to be putting their lives on the line. That's their following. When Nick Fuentes talks about disaffected young white men, who do we think goes to the military? Not that that's the only population, not that that's the only group of white people that go, but let's be honest, that's a large portion. I would think, somebody correct me. That's a large portion. So when you're betting on these young white Christian men to go to war and fight your battles on behalf of you maintaining the only Jewish state, acting as if Jews and Christians are just buddy-buddy and like Christians are getting treated exceptionally well in Israel. Shout out to Officer Tatum. What'd he say? They only got spit on once when they were in Israel? This is all a game. This is all a game. So I'm I'm with Nick when he talks about the old, you have no rights. Your rights come from us. What country has rights? So you think that it's okay for you to take somebody's land in a war, right? Isn't that what people are saying, in a war? But then when they respond, that's not part of the war. So they were living there, minding their business, right? Then there was a war and you took their land, right? You made them leave, right? Even though the UN told you to compensate them for that land, the civilians that lost their land, even though the UN told you to allow them the right of return, you denied both. Now, when somebody commits a terrorist action against you, it's terror, right? It's a terrorist act. But you can respond offensively, right? Preemptively. You can be on the offense as your defense, but when these people respond, it's a terrorist act. Okay. This is why they have to control the narrative. This is why Bibi Netanyahu needs to control TikTok and X, because it's all about narratives. Bibi Netanyahu can jump on TV and say what Hamas, all the horrific things, that they were doing this to the babies, they were doing this to the women. First off, a whole bunch of reports came out that a lot of those reports were lies. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't reports come out and say that there was a whole bunch of weird and devilish, demonic things being done by the IDF soldiers? So y'all gonna have to miss me with that. But one thing that I will just circle back to and finish off with is that I think Nick may be a little bit off, just how I think I was a little bit off. Even when I say you have no rights, your rights come from us, it's insinuating that America is the actual power here. I remember talking to somebody, a very successful Jewish guy, and he told me, I was asking him about some life lessons, and he told me that one of the life lessons that he learned is that he'd always prefer to be the minority wherever he is. And that always stuck with me. Why would somebody prefer to be the minority? Why? They know how to leverage them being the minority. They know how to leverage them being the minority. They know how to leverage that into victimhood, into controlling the narrative, that things are happening to us, so therefore we can just respond. They're only the minority when it comes to people in a particular region. When it comes to the power that is behind Israel, they're not the minority. It's not even close. It's not even close, but they use it to their advantage. So I'm not going to hold y'all for too much longer than that. That's really all I have. And let me kind of look at the notes, make sure that I don't want to add anything else. But no, I think I'm good there. Y'all let me know where I'm wrong. Let me know where you think I'm right. Let me know where, I may be having some blind spots, and we'll go from there. As always, appreciate y'all tapping in, man. Love and appreciate y'all, for real. Love and appreciate y'all. Keep checking out the content. Let me know some ways that we can get better. Always looking to improve, of course. I know one of those ways, I'm sure somebody's going to write, is make sure you get the videos out on time. We're working hard on it. But period. Not but. We're working hard on it. We also have other things that we do throughout the day, throughout the week. Like we're doing a conference this week, so things may be a little bit delayed, but we'll see. On that note, I'll see y'all soon. Have a good one.
It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.